Welcome to Converge at Walmart. I'm Vishal Gupta. I head product management at PhonePe, and I have been working in the fintech retail space for over 2 decades. Today's topic is fintech trends and evolving retail experiences. The digital payment landscape across the world is at the cusp of accelerated transformation and adoption. And as we've seen in recent years, the way consumers and businesses pay and being paying has changed a lot, and the pace of digital payments have grown tremendously. In an effort towards providing the best customer experience, the lines between fintech and retail techs are blurring continuously. From being at the tail end of the customer journey in retail payments experience, and innovations are moving up the chain, where it has started to influence the retail behavior right from the customer shopping preferences, product discovery, and various methods of engagement. We are seeing multiple trends emerging towards collaboration between retail and fintech. New innovations using data intelligence and fintech offerings like buy now, pay later as a part of core retail experience. I'm thrilled, therefore, that I have with me three experts who are innovating with fintech in interesting ways at scale to help us explore fintech trends that can enable better retail experiences. First, we have Arvind Ronta, Head of Products for India and South Asia Visa, the global payments technology company, working to enable consumers, businesses, banks, and governments to use digital currency. In India, Visa works with startups innovating for fintech with the Visa Fintechs Initiative India. We also have Khilan Haria, VP and Head Product Management, Razorpay, the fintech unicorn that aims to revolutionize money management for online businesses. Razorpay is the only payment solutions in India that allows businesses to accept, process, and disperse payments with its product suite. Finally, we have Lizzie Chapman, co-founder and CEO of Zest Money, an AI-driven EMI financing and buy now, pay later platform in India. Zest Money is deeply integrated with some of the largest merchants in India. Before we start our discussion, once again, welcome to all the audience. There's something special for our audience as well. Please do tweet your key takeaways from the session with the hashtag Converge at Walmart. There are exciting prizes for a few lucky tweets. So I'll start with Khilan, and basically, these are very exciting times of hypergrowth in both retail and fintech space. Despite this, if you think there's still a large customer segment which has not migrated to digital payments as a prominent choice. How do you see the emerging trends around this opportunity?
Yeah, that's a very pertinent question. I think number one is a lot of consumers are comfortable with digital payments for only a few use cases. And typically the journey starts from the lower tier, which is, convenience, largely around bill payments, etc., recharges. Then kind of slowly goes up still a little bit towards, retail, travel, and then towards retail with the biggies. And then these consumers become comfortable with transacting and using digital payments across the board for a lot of their other use cases. And when we work with, enterprise merchants, we see a sizable audience of that 200 billion that, we see transacting online. But as it goes downstream to SMEs, we see a lot of these same consumers prefer to transact via COD. And hence, I think there is a lot that needs to happen towards enabling trust for the end consumers. I think new merchants have to focus and consciously work on enabling trust. There is a lot of question mark around building that empathy with the consumers and allowing him to prepay. I think that is one critical aspect where especially new merchants, when they build a relationship with new consumers, has to come in. I think the second crucial aspect is the payment ecosystem has to allow instruments like one-time mandate and similar ones which build the trust with the consumers that they have the control of their money until goods and services are delivered. Right now, I think there is not a single instrument that builds this trust in the end consumers. I mean, typically cards have authorize and capture, but your money is blocked. I mean, even UPI one-time mandate, your money is blocked. So principally, consumers do not feel that it is in their hands to stop a capture or stop a debit in case if there is a challenge. So I think there is a lot that we will see happening over here from multiple instruments, as I think a lot of folks are trying to solve similar problems, and we've seen interesting ideas. I think OTM was one such amazing innovation. It's already helping in few pockets, but I'm sure if it could pivot and solve for that money blocking aspect and pass the control to consumers, it could be more powerful. I think more and more we do this where consumers feel at the control and the liberty that in case of lack of fulfillment of goods or services, it is in their hands to get the money back. The more we'll see adoption of digital payments, especially for the long tail. Otherwise, we'll have 500 million audience, which is comfortable transacting for only 2 or 3% of India's overall economy. we want, this to be 20% at $500 million, not 2%. And that's where a lot of innovation needs to happen.
Thanks for the lovely insights, Kellen. I think what you're saying is pretty much, I think, bang on. We need to get the customer tip over using utility payments, and then basically win the trust by giving them the right control and right confidence to be able to kind of use it very, very widely. I think, and that's probably perfectly for the next question to Lizzie. If you think about retail and affordability goes the long way, and probably affordability is one of the levers where we can tip over more and more customers towards getting into the digital payments. So there's a large set of customers where affordability can be boosted via buy now, pay later kind of solutions. How are you looking at expanding the set?
Yes, brilliant question. You're right. Right now, all over the world, buy now, pay later products are exploding in adoption. And it's because it's a really genuinely win-win product construct that benefits the consumer as well as the retailer. At ZestMoney, we're obviously biased, but we think India is going to be the most exciting market for these products globally for a few factors. And one is the point you're referring to, which is about adoption of consumer credit in this market. So exactly as we've just heard from Kellen, we have this rapidly digitalizing customer base. It's typically young, and whether you use the words like millennial or Gen Z, but these are young digital consumers who have young digital consumer behavior. That means they spend a lot of time absorbing, utilizing content and services online, and they expect financial products that match that digital transparency and access point. And that's why BNPL is so powerful. The second point is that they've basically rejected credit cards. Credit cards as a business model have been pretty unsuccessful in the India market, whichever way you look at it. We have less than 30 million unique credit card users today, and that number is not expanding rapidly enough. So what we believe is there's a huge white space. There is an insufficient credit product that exists, a credit card that doesn't work for that young digital consumer for a number of reasons. And yet at the same time, there is a product like BNPL coming into this market and providing that convenience and access, as you said. I think the final point is one of distribution and how you think about operating models in these products. The credit card physical distribution model is very, very challenging to get into, the length and breadth of a complex market like India. What's brilliant about BNPL is it's an on-the-fly credit solution that can be tapped at any ticket size. So from a 200 rupee transaction, if that's needed, a customer can avail an affordability solution on the fly, real time. There's no other credit product today that provides that level of convenience and at such low cost and such a low ticket size. Again, perfect for a market like India. So for these reasons, we are very, very excited about the next couple of years in the BNPL space. Today, total online BNPL transactions are probably less than 1% of overall, including cash on delivery. And we think a lot of that COD will migrate over time to BNPL as you see this digitalization that Kellen described. Final point on this, and it's really important because the topic always when we talk fintech is one of regulation, but one of the things that makes India unique as well in the world from a BNPL perspective is we already have a tried and tested regulatory regime that covers these products. Thanks to companies like Bajaj Finserv, who were real pioneers in the physical version of this product, we have very, very clear guidelines. It's very black and white how these products operate. That's not the case in a lot of other markets, which leads to a little bit of uncertainty on the outlook. So India is actually a really, really exciting market where I hope we're going to hear now from the Visa MasterCard side of the world, but already we're seeing traditional banks, traditional financial services companies work together with technology companies to drive penetration and adoption of buy now, pay later solutions in this country.
Yeah, Lizzie, I think you're bang on again. If you think about India is probably one of the most forward markets when it comes to payments and fintech world, right? It is kind of leapfrogged lots of steps and much ahead of the curve than rest of the world for that matter. And also, I think you touched upon an interesting point that distribution is going to be key. How we kind of reach out to more people and basically set that right behavior, because BNPL does solve for the trust aspect of it, and majority of COD customers probably can migrate to this particular option. Very, very excited times. And again, I think, again, very fair timing for the next question to Arvind. Given the dominance and expertise in building ecosystems, how do you think this new age fintech ecosystems will evolve?
Thanks, Vishal. First of all, I think fintechs are a very core part of our ecosystem within as Visa as a network, as we define it. We often are seen as a card network, but if you've been familiar with our network strategy, Visa moves money from point A to point B. It happens predominantly in card rails in the universe we live today, but it's also happening on account rails in so many countries we operate. And fintechs are very key in terms of partnership, because they're enabling distribution, they're enabling a great customer experience, they're enabling banks to be more efficient in attracting customers at scale with the right experience. So a lot of the, a little for us against us mentality that used to happen probably a decade ago between banks seeing fintechs as competitors has washed away. We work very closely with both bank partners and fintechs to help fintechs understand the regulations, what's involved in and to play by the law of the land with right customer protections and balancing that with the right experience, of course, and with the banks who are riddled with legacy infrastructure. How can they work with fintechs who can actually help them get faster to market, both from a capability perspective as well as customer experience perspective. So I think A, fintechs are critical part of the ecosystem. B, there's a lot of money pouring into the market. We see a lot of investor confidence, but at some point, all fintechs will have to demonstrate scale with profitability. And that's where I think we will see, and we've started to see, if you look at neobanks, if you look at some of the BNPL providers, they're moving to more models which have a much clear monetization model. So it's sustaining, right? Otherwise, you end up burning a lot of VC cash to drive scale, but without any clear monetization model. So I think that should be the next evolution, where where fintechs working with networks like ours, working with bank partners, trying to solve for customer problems that exist, try to solve for scale problems that exist, but doing it in a meaningful way that actually can help them be sustaining over the long period of time from a profitability perspective as well.
Definitely, what you bring in from the core experience in building a very, very large network, which is such a widespread network, scale is going to be super critical, and collaboration with new age companies, right? And continue to be look out for what are the various trends. I think is going to be very, very interesting. Going again to Khilan and basically asking something which is basically not necessarily known in detail to everyone in terms of how people think about it. Razorpay has been leading the enterprise fintech space, and area I'm sure that audience would like to know more about. Khilan, how are you seeing this space emerge?
I mean, enterprise fintech, see, for us, I think what we observe is that large enterprises across different, verticals and industries play a very critical role in being early adopters of new innovation. So the way we, think about large enterprises is think of them as partners for co-creating and co-launching new innovations alongside the payment ecosystem. Varied needs is what we observe. So one of our first learning, when we wanted to penetrate the enterprise segment, was that this segment does not operate as one single segment. It actually operates as 10 large segments, and each of these 10 segments have different unique needs. So if we are going to go with one offering to these 10 segments, we will not really be able to solve their problems. So we had to first unlearn and empathize that what are the problems that these large enterprises face, and problems are of different nature. And some of these are very micro problems, which by itself can lead to an amazing outcome for the enterprise and hence for us and the ecosystem. Like, for example, we've learned that refunds is an extremely large problem for a lot of enterprises. We've learned that disbursement in real time is a large problem for many, many use cases. But in the lending world, to disperse loan in real time has become a wow factor. it really wasn't easily doable. Everything was doable, but it was slightly difficult for lenders to do it. So in every industry and category, in the enterprise fintech world, we observe that enterprises who are our customers and partners are the pioneers and early innovators. What they need is a partner who's willing to brainstorm with them, understand their problem, and co-create stuff with them if it is not readily available out there. And that is where, for us, the ecosystem, Arvind's team at Visa, Liz's team, everyone in the ecosystem plays a crucial role. We go back to our partners and we are hearing this new problem. Is there a way for us to solve? And several times we don't find a way, but several times we do find a way. So I think it's critical for us. The thing that has worked is to not take an approach of, here is what we have, can we go and penetrate? We've had to take an open approach of, we've got something we believe will solve some of the problems we foresee, but what are your other problems, and let's brainstorm together. And some of this has led to the birth of our most successful offerings today. Right from our early days when we only had payment gateway, payment link-based solution, virtual accounts, all of this were marketplace settlement, even our payout suite of how we thought about payout evolved as we started co-creating. For us, the success of most of our new offerings in the enterprise space has come by taking this unique approach, where let's consider these folks as partners and empathize the problems and then work together to co-launch a solution.
Yeah, I think that's very interesting point what you made there, that early adopters are typically large enterprises on this thing. And if you think about large retail companies, they do have lots of problem statements, probably second order problem statements, but which can open up like really interesting opportunities, and not only for them but also for the entire ecosystem. So it's very interesting and important to kind of collaborate with that. And on that note, going to Lizzie with a follow-up question, basically, if you think about there is lots of partnerships which are possible with this retail partners, and while it's a cliche to say data is new oil, the fact remains that data intelligence has a huge role in fintech space. So what is your approach towards building data intelligence, and more so in terms of in collaboration with the partners?
Yeah, that's a brilliant question. And it actually gets to the crux of why BNPL products are so exciting and providing that access. How is it that BNPL providers are able to approve and create solutions for a much wider pool of customers than traditional underwriting mechanisms? It comes down to data. But I just want to start by saying that it's not just data in underwriting. The incredible thing about most BNPL companies, and certainly Zest, is we make data at the heart of everything we do, from how we onboard a customer. So even the user journey that the customer goes through will depend on different data sets that we're able to access, right? So if we can find substantial data about the customer in the credit bureau, then the customer may not have to do certain steps in the onboarding process. So data is even driving that, all the way through to the product design, the pricing, the credit limit that the customer is ascribed, and finally the collections and the way that we service the loan. And a lot of that really came into fruition during the last 18 months, when we saw one of the most challenging times for any type of credit product, especially in the India backdrop, with things like a moratorium, a lot of regulatory flux and change, and things like restructuring. So data was actually our, magic tool that we used every day to make sure that we could maintain an excellent customer experience, but also respond to that challenging environment. We can do some real magic. One of the best ways to think about it is, as a BNPL working with the retailer, we have the most up-to-date real-life information about that consumer. Often when a credit card was issued, it was a historical event that was done in the past. That credit limit was done based on previous behavior. So maybe credit behavior in the years leading up to that application 2 years ago. And to some extent, that's a static decision, right? That was an underwriting decision taken at one point in time. The amazing thing about BNPL products is we can constantly dynamically underwrite. So every single transaction is a new opportunity to reassess that customer, good and bad, right? Events change, customer may have lost their job, then it wouldn't be wise for them to take on additional credit, and we can help restrict at that time. But customer may also have had a massive pay rise, which is a situation we're seeing a lot at the moment, especially in the startup ecosystem. So therefore, why can't we enable that customer real time to have a better affordability limit, for example? So the beautiful thing about working real time with the retailer is not just access to new data, but data in a timely manner that gives you a much, much fuller picture about this customer, not just based on a historical salary input or credit bureau input.
Sure, yeah, I think the secret to expanding is basically getting and solving for lots of thin files, unless until we are able to do that, and lots of real-time data, I think we cannot kind of solve for the expansion. And I completely agree that that's the right approach to kind of do lots of deep partnership with the real-time data. Arvind, again, coming back to you, and again, seeking in terms of, if you think about, you talk about financial inclusion or digital adoption, we've just, scratched the surface. Going forward, which are the trends you'll bet on to expand it beyond?
Yeah, absolutely. See, on the face-to-face commerce, which of course has been dead because of this bunch of lockdowns and the slow pace of face-to-face recovery, contactless is a real trend, right? Like I think as an ecosystem, contactless payments in India, both card or mobile, doesn't matter, has grown 2x, more than actually 2x in terms of contactless penetration that we measure as a metric, basically, which measures as how many, all of face-to-face transactions, how many transactions are happening contactless. That's more than double. And of course, that's obvious, Philip, was because of COVID, but even before that, I think contactless had a good momentum. And I think if that stays on, it will be one of those countries which can actually tackle on the problem of cash for everyday use cases. Contactless is a known form factor for displacing cash for a bunch of use cases, from QSR to grocery and so on, and so many markets we've seen. And the good thing is, with all the ecosystem on the merchant side of the equation, it's mushrooming, right? Like whether it's tap to phone, and then traditional contactless terminals are en masse now versus a few years ago. On the digital front, maybe I'll talk about the enablers first. Open banking and open data is a real trend. India has an established data empowerment and protection architecture and account aggregator framework, which enables data sharing across all regulated financial institutions. Enables, it's been framed, it's been articulated by the regulator. As an industry now, as we build the ecosystem around it, I think it's a huge powering trend for a bunch of use cases, including financial inclusion or credit inclusion and so on. On the e-commerce side, there's going to be a lot of course, digital commerce, as all the panelists mentioned, has seen a fillip. People are using, getting online, familiarizing themselves with apps for everyday use cases. And I think what's going to happen is that the bar for security, cybersecurity in particular, is going to be more and more high as more commerce shift to online. Of course, it's obvious, and of course, the right thing to do is to make the right investments in cybersecurity infrastructure. And one last thing about, kind of touches data again, but, to Lizzie's point earlier, it's very important. Like, we have massive amounts of data, but how that data is used, what frameworks have we used to be allowed that data to be used, right? So whether it's consent frameworks that exist today in how the data can be used by whichever party, whichever regulated party it might be. And then the second thing is how are you going to use it, right? And in BNPL case, as an example, we're spending a lot of time to figure out propensity scores, like who has the right propensity to apply for a BNPL loan, or in other words, even in a standard credit cards, right? Like we've got like 30 million credit cards in the country versus 900 million plus debit cards. How do I predict that a person who's using his debit card actually has the right profile to be given a loan product by leveraging data that they've been making on their debit transactions, right? So, or account transactions. So creating these propensity scores or predictive models that allows lenders to be able to provide line of credit basis the right behaviors in one product category to cross-sell to the other product. There's a bunch of these things, which of course are happening in partnership with lenders. And I think as we do that more between fintechs, banks, networks like ours, there's a lot of potential to expand the ecosystems around some of these trends that the panelists have been talking about.
I think, again, very interesting insights. Two things what I'm taking away is, one is the solving for the experience, be it paying experience or basically credit experience, contactless or on the tap kind of model, right, is going to be super critical. And second interesting point what you made is kind of, if we can democratize the data, right, how can the entire ecosystem benefit out of it with deeper collaboration on that data is going to be very, very interesting one. I'll probably shoot one last question to all of you. And at PhonePe, we strongly believe in solving for the ecosystem, building for the ecosystem. And historically, it's been proven that ecosystems thrive when innovation is done in collaboration. So what are the key collaboration needs which can accelerate the fintech revolution? Would like to hear from all of you one by one. Kilan, I think you can start.
I think the overarching theme I would want the ecosystem to collaborate more closely is how do we drive more digitization in the payments ecosystem? Something that kind of I shared at the very beginning of the session. The success of the entire ecosystem and almost the right incentive for everyone in the ecosystem is to have more consumers participate. And that will not happen with one single node trying to do everything. So I think a lot of collaboration is possible for us to drive more adoption of the overall digital ecosystem, which would of course translate into more merchants using it, which would translate into more trust with end consumers, which would possibly translate into convenience, into vernacular, into many other things. But if India has to, overall scale, and which means that all the parties in the payment ecosystem have to reap rewards and benefits out of this scale, I think everyone will benefit if this one thing happens. So I do think that this is an area where the ecosystem could collaborate a lot more. I do see a lot of efforts happening in isolation, but potentially more collaboration on this could benefit the entire ecosystem.
No, I think you're right. In order to create the right network effect, all nodes needs to start ticking and basically ticking in sync and basically add up to each other. That's going to be super critical to expand the ecosystem. Lizzie, would love to hear from you.
Yes, and you've got a great panel for this question. I think this is like the collaboration ecosystem team. We are obsessed with collaboration. That's basically what defines our entire business model on both sides. So we spend our life collaborating with retailers, with payment partners. We work with people like Razorpay, Pine Labs, and we power their BNPL solutions. So we're increasing their GMV, we're increasing their relationship and depth with their merchant partners. And then on the other side, we are actually not the lender on book in majority of cases. We work with existing banks and NBFCs in the ecosystem, about 22 right now. And a final kind of push for like why I'm so bullish on fintech in India and specifically BNPL is exactly that point that Arvind made earlier. Banks in India are actually some of the best well-run banks in the world. They are absolutely brilliant at raising deposits. And that's why you see this amazing customer base of digital deposit holders, 900 million debit card holders. What they don't love to do or haven't found a perfect distribution model for is unsecured consumer credit. So what they do brilliantly now is form partnerships with players like Zest Money, where they can use that existing debit card base that they have, but basically give them more exciting, innovative products via these partnerships. That's actually not happening in the rest of the world. In the rest of the world, there's a sort of tension, I would say, like a friction between the traditional banks and the new age fintechs. I don't see that in this market. I think this is one of the most collaborative, healthy ecosystems, both on the retail and digital payment side, but maybe more importantly on the bank and traditional financial services side. And that's why I'm so excited long term about the scale that we can get to, because I think only by collaborating can we achieve the full potential of the size of this market.
Sure. I think very interesting point you made, Lizzie. Arvind, coming to you, Visa has actually created history in terms of by creating that entire cards or network ecosystem by collaborating with every stakeholder and making sure that even they are partners in profit pools, not only just the part of the ecosystem, be it issuer, be it acquirer, right, be it merchant or the customers. What things needs to change or be basically accelerated based on the new equation?
Yeah, you see, the first question, which begs to be answered is like, what does it take to stand up a robust ecosystem? And I think our experience tells us that you need to have strong value proposition on a two-sided networks for both merchants and consumers. And of course, there is a bank behind a consumer. And also that everyone has to play by the same set of rules and a standardized, so we call it standardized rules, operating governance, operating rules, and an incentive structure that motivates both sides to actually put some skin in the game and drive the network effects. And I think, one of the things to acknowledge is ecosystems take time to develop. Point number two, I would say, is collaboration is not just required within the industry, but also with the regulator and the industry. And I think that is always a learning curve, right? Any new ecosystems that are developed, like open data is top hot ecosystem conversation right now. Digital currency is one. And we are having these conversations with regulators across the world on how to see these new ecosystem development, as we march forward, because it will require a hell lot more collaboration between the regulator and the industry. And then one final point on India, is a very unique market. And I like the point Kalin mentioned in his first answer earlier on. Co-creation is so important for India because India is not a market because it's so diverse and heterogeneous that you can't take a product which is worked in, say, US and bolt onto that in India. It just doesn't work. And in our case, we built e-commerce products like SafeClick, which was made in India for India. And the entire stack was created because 2FA mandate challenge is only in India, and we wanted to solve for friction in the right way, in the regulatory compliant way. So it did require us to co-create that product along with partners, both fintech as well as bank and the merchant. And now, once that product has gone out of MVP and started to scale, the ecosystem participants within India are starting to participate in it, including PhonePe. I think it's one of the biggest customers we have for SafeClick. My point is that, it does require a whole village to come together to the ecosystem. I think in the India context, there has to be appreciation for the diversity of this market. So you are applying more co-creation, more customization, or more refinedness in how you collaborate for some of the unique challenges in India, which can't just be bolt and pasted from other markets into India.
I think it's coming out as a common theme also. Lizzie also mentioned it, that India is probably far more ripe for collaboration and innovation. Every stakeholder is pretty much very open to figure out the opportunities to kind of create impact and basically solve for something at scale. The second point what you made was also very interesting, that now with this new digital era, actually reaching scale is taking much lesser time. For example, we have acquired 20 million merchants in a very, very short time. So it requires much lesser time to kind of reach scale. And that's again, very, very interesting point. And if we all of us put our energy together with the right intent, I'm sure there are multiple layers of impacts which can be created in a very, very heterogeneous market like India. If you think about the way this ecosystem is evolving, right? Let's keep watching this space. Let's keep working together and let's create great impact. Exciting times ahead. Pretty much, I think from this, I think we're done with the time. I'm sure we can talk on and on these topics and get lots of insights from these experts. But yes, time is the limit here. And I would like to conclude here by extending my thanks to all the panelists. Thanks for being very candid about your point of views and sharing insights from your respective industries. Thanks everyone for attending the session.